Hi, this is Lauren from LSP Actions, Lemon Sky Photography, Enchantypix and Focus Darling. In this quick tutorial I'm going to show you how to manually add a texture overlay by hand. Could be a texture overlay that you have purchased, that you've downloaded from the Enchantypix gallery, you've created yourself. So go ahead and open up your image in Photoshop. Come up to File and choose Place Embedded and locate the texture on your computer, in your Downloads folder or wherever it is in your files. Click this and it will appear over the top of your image. Make sure the texture fills the whole image by dragging it out and hit enter. Up here on your layers panel, you're going to want to change the blend mode to soft light or overlay. You can also change it to multiply to make it darker or screen to make it very, very bright. I tend to prefer soft light. If you can't see your layers panel, come up to window and hit layers. So those blend modes, soft light is the one I like, overlay is a bit harsher, multiply makes it darker, and screen makes it brighter. So just remember those: soft light, overlay, multiply and screen. Next up we're going to add a layer mask. So down here at the bottom of the layers panel, the little box with the circle in adds this white layer mask, like a lottery scratch card. White means show and black means hide. So we're going to go ahead and grab a brush on black and just use this to brush over that layer mask on the texture to hide certain areas. And what we're doing, we're hiding it on the skin. So we want to take this off the skin. And the dress, anywhere else you don't want the texture to show. At this point you might want to zoom in and make sure that your masking is good. You can play with the opacity of the texture layer, turning it up or down. You can also desaturate the texture if you find the colours are too bold by coming down to this little circle, half and half, and click this and add hue and saturation. This will add a hue and saturation layer. Right now, if you change this, it's going to affect the whole image. You don't want to do that. So right click and choose Create Clipping Mask. Make sure it's above the texture layer and it will clip to the texture. This means it's only going to affect the texture layer or any layer that it's clipped to. So take the opacity, the saturation down, a little bit if you find it's a little bit too saturated. You can also play with the top bar, that's the hue, to change the colours in the image, in the texture. So I'm just going to take that down a bit. Next up, if you unlink this layer mask here by clicking the little link, this means if you click on the texture with the move tool, you can move this around and the cutout will stay the same. The layer mask is not moving, just the texture. I'm actually going to rasterize this layer, which makes it editable, so right click and choose rasterize layer. That takes it away from being the smart object that we placed it in as, and now it's a rasterized layer, which means it's kind of a JPEG layer on top. You can grab Marquee tool. This is how we create a perspective. Bring it up to the natural backdrop of your image. Control or Command T, right click, perspective, and we can add some perspective in the background there. So that's how you'd add a perspective in as well. Make sure you unlink the layer mask first or it's going to affect the layer mask, and rasterize that layer. So that's basically how you'd add a texture in Photoshop. You could do this with outdoor images too. You can do it with flowers. You can add any kind of texture over your images. It's really, really good fun, and it adds a very, very striking feature. Take that opacity down a little bit and we can see them. Also great for covering any imperfections in the background. Let's go ahead and add a floral texture to this one. The floral I'm going to add, I've downloaded from the LSP Enchantypix gallery. So I'm going to come up here and choose Place Embedded and locate this on the computer. And using the same technique, we're going to position the floral. What I'm going to do is just take the opacity down a little bit while I'm positioning so I can make sure I've got it in the right spot. Zooming out a little bit there. So I want this to kind of line up with that background layer there. Add the layer mask. Change the blend mode. Pop the opacity up a little bit in the same way as adding a texture. We could go soft light, multiply, screen will make it very, very bright. How about soft light for this one? And then on the layer mask you can paint this off your subject. So grab your brush, set to black, and paint it off your subject. If you have a complex area to paint this away from, as I do here, you can always make a selection too if you want to. You can make a selection using the quick selection tool like this. Make sure you're on the layer that you're selecting from. That is really quite good. It kind of snaps in around any objects it thinks you want to select. If you're on an older version of Photoshop, you can zoom in and use a lasso, perhaps, or marquee tool to manually select. By selecting, you are holding down Shift to select, and you can hold down Alt to deselect. Just getting in that bit there. And then back here on the texture layer, we can use our selection with the black brush to just quickly paint this off our subject. I'm just going to run this across the bottom as well. I don't really want the texture coming down onto the wood. Switching to a white brush just to paint in a little bit here. Our selection selected under here, I didn't notice that, so I'm just painting that texture back in. So we've added a texture. I'll just crop this in a little bit. I've just realised I've got a little bit of overhang there from the original editing. And again, you can change the blend mode if you want to. Multiply makes it very dark, screen makes it very bright, overlay and soft light. I really do like soft light for adding textures in. And we can desaturate again by adding hue and saturation layer, create the clipping mask and bring the colour down or up or change it. So I hope you enjoy adding textures in Photoshop. You can also add the LSP overlay composite actions. This is a complete kit for compositing, adding textures, glitters, overlays, florals, adding a sky overlay, shadows, adding your subject to a digital background. And it comes with so many different options included, and it kind of does everything for you. If you've purchased any textures from the LSP Actions website, you'll have a texture applicator action on your computer. So I hope you enjoy adding textures to your images. The possibilities really are endless. You can add these to any kind of images just to give it that extra texture and oomph. I'm Lauren, thanks for watching.